You wanted an update to the TikTok ban, which is still happening in 16 days, so here it is. Both TikTok and the Department of Justice filed their reply briefs to the Supreme Court today. I told you in these videos that each side submitted their opening briefs last week. Those briefs were like TikTok and the government's opening statements to the justices. Well, today, TikTok is responding to the government's opening statement, and the government is responding to TikTok's opening statement. And as you can imagine, neither side is holding anything back. Yes, I read both of the briefs from today, and I'm just going to highlight a few key things that each side brought up. So this video is going to be a little bit long, but stick around because you might not believe what the federal government actually said in their brief. Just wait for it. First, TikTok's brief really goes after the federal government's main argument that not only does TikTok as a company not have any First Amendment rights, but the government says all of TikTok's 170 million American users also do not have any First Amendment rights in this case because, according to the government, TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is based in China, a foreign adversary. So therefore, First Amendment rights do not apply to anybody. In its reply brief, TikTok said, "Not today, not in America, that's not how it works." That argument has no basis in law or fact and contradicts the government's concession that TikTok Inc. is a bona fide American company. The government proclaims this American company has no First Amendment rights to be controlled by a foreign adversary or to serve as a compelled mouthpiece for ByteDance's speech. Again, no citation follows that assertion. Both law and logic hold otherwise. Now, just for some technical clarification, yes, TikTok is an American company, but TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is not an American company. It is a company based in China. The U.S. government has deemed China a foreign adversary. No, TikTok's parent company is not a Singaporean company. TikTok's CEO is from Singapore, but that has nothing to do with who owns TikTok. Okay, back to TikTok's arguments. At several points in their 31-page reply brief, TikTok points out how the U.S. government just says stuff and makes claims, but then offers no proof of any real threat that TikTok is posing to the homeland. For example, the government claims that TikTok collects wide swaths of U.S. user data and feeds that data to China. And then the U.S. government claims that because of that and several other reasons, TikTok is a grave national security risk. TikTok responds by saying, in fact, the government fails to prove TikTok is a severe data security risk at all. The government asserts that China has great interest in Americans' data. TikTok has great amounts of Americans' data, and China has great control over TikTok and ByteDance. Again, however, it concedes the alleged risk has never materialized while making no effort to explain why this dog has never barked. The explanation is that the government's premises are wrong. But the U.S. government is not backing down. They are actually doubling down that the TikTok ban is not a violation of the First Amendment. And in fact, in some kind of Jedi mind trickery, the government says banning TikTok would actually be upholding the First Amendment. The act neither seeks to suppress any American speech nor to prevent any American from receiving speech from abroad, including PRC propaganda. Instead, it simply seeks to prevent the PRC from controlling a platform that holds itself out as today's quintessential marketplace of ideas. By preventing a foreign adversary government from secretly manipulating a U.S. communications platform used by 170 million Americans, the act actually vindicates the values that undergird the First Amendment. Perhaps the most interesting argument the government makes in its reply brief is to TikTok's argument that Congress didn't have to ban TikTok. TikTok argued that if Congress really believed that the platform was a national security threat, that the law actually says Congress could have and should have instead slapped a warning label on the platform. Brace yourself for this. In its reply brief, the government basically wrote, "We tried to warn people and they didn't care, so we banned it." Requiring TikTok to disclose the potential data collection risk to users is not a viable alternative. The government has publicly highlighted TikTok's data security risk for years, yet usage of the application and corresponding data collection has only continued to grow. TikTok also ignores that the United States has a compelling interest in preventing the PRC from exploiting TikTok's user data, even if individual users would choose to disregard that risk. I lastly want to point out that the U.S. government said in its brief that the Supreme Court should disregard President-elect Trump's filing asking the court to put a pause on the TikTok ban so he can assess the national security risk and decide what to do with the platform once he takes office. The government said that in order to do what Trump wants, TikTok would have to prove that they could win this case. The government says they have not done that. Petitioners have not made that showing here, and the president-elect does not argue otherwise. We will have to wait and see what happens during oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court 1 week from today.